What do an ancient golden calf, a mass killing order from Moses, and Donald Trump's illegal war on Iran have in common? They're all chapters in the same relentless story, one that uses fear and blood to keep millions in check. Stay with me, because the truth will change how you see religion, politics, and your own freedom forever. Welcome to Secular Strike Back. I'm Toothless Grin Kim. When I first opened the Bible as a curious youngster, very young, the story of the golden calf seemed like a simple cautionary tale about idolatry. But when I read Exodus chapter 32, verses 26 through 29, the narrative turns from warning to a chilling command and execution scene. When speaking of Moses after he found his people worshiping the golden calf, Exodus chapter 32, verses 26 through 29 reads like this. So he stood at the entrance to the camp and said, "Whoever is for the Lord, come to me." And all the Levites rallied to him. Then he said to them, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Each man strap a sword to his side. Go back and forth through the camp from one end to the other, each killing his brother and friend and neighbor." The Levites did as Moses commanded, and that day about 3,000 of the people died. Then Moses said, "You have been set apart to the Lord today, for you were against your own sons and brothers, and he has blessed you this day." So I ask my audience, what is happening here? Moses has just descended from Mount Sinai with tablets of stone, having the 10 Commandments, as you know, to find his people adoring a huge chunk of gold. Rather than preaching forgiveness or offering a path back to the covenant, he orders an intra-community genocide. The Levites, those chosen to serve the priesthood, are told to kill his brother, his friend, his neighbor. The text itself tells us that about 3,000 Israelites were slain in a single day. This wasn't a symbolic gesture. It was an organized massacre sanctioned by the word of the Lord. The passage is often glossed over in modern sermons, but the raw horror is unmistakable. God, via Moses, demands the blood of dissenters. Why does this matter today? Because the logic that underpins this episode, the fear of abandonment leading to idolatry, the need for an authoritarian figure to purge heretics, the promise of divine blessing for those who obey, reappears in every major episode of religiously justified violence throughout history. So Exodus chapter 32 is not an isolated incident. If you flip through the Pentateuch and the historical books, you'll encounter a recurring formula. Divine abandonment or silence instills people panic. Idolatry or rebellion. The faithful are called to act. Divine command for violent purification. It means that the faithful become executioners. Consider the following examples. The global flood, as mentioned in Genesis. Destroy every living thing except for Noah's family and a few animals, and then reset humanity. The conquest of Canaan, as described in the book of Joshua, do not show mercy, killing 20 to 30,000 or more people, and took the land that had been promised by God. The Levites' revenge in the book of Judges to kill the tribe of Benjamin. This equals 25,000 or more people that were killed, retaliation for a crime that they had committed. The massacre of the Midianites. Kill every man, woman, child. This equaled over 24,000 people that had been killed in punishment for idolatry. Each story follows the God-mandated cleansing template. The result is a theological justification for mass murder, ethnic cleansing, and genocide that believers can cite as divine precedent. When those ancient narratives are taught as historical truth, they become a cultural script for how to deal with dissent. The script tells us, if the faithful are threatened, the solution is not dialogue, but the sword. Fast forward 3,500 years later, the Bible is no longer a dusty scroll in a desert cave. It's a global industry with billions of readers, television evangelists, and political lobbyists. The blood-soaked narrative has been repackaged into modern political rhetoric. Christian nationalism, the belief that the United States is a Christian nation and that its government should enforce a specific interpretation of the Bible, draws directly from the same scriptural logic. Divine mandate, we are God's chosen people. Moral purity, any compromise is apostasy. Violent enforcement, we must fight the secular, the LGBTQ+, the Muslims, and the atheists. The MAGA movement has taken this to an unprecedented level. Its leaders quote biblical passages as if they were policy memos, and they celebrate the idea of a holy war against any entity that threatens the Christian order. One of the most striking contemporary examples is the illegal war on Iran, a campaign launched not by Congress, but by an administration that equated a geopolitical opponent with an abominable alien nation, a common rhetorical device used by the Bible to dehumanize the other. In the early months of 2020, after the impeachment trial, Donald Trump pivoted his rhetoric toward a new Cold War with Iran. He began to paint Iran as a satanic, God-hating nation, a language that mirrors the biblical description of the nation of Canaan that must be eradicated for Israel's sake. Here are some key moments. Here's some quotes that Trump gave. On January 3rd, 2020, Donald Trump, quote, said, quote, Iran is a nightmare for the American people. Compare it to the Bible, where Canaan is a land of wickedness. On January 7th, 2020, Trump quoted, we will not be intimidated. We will destroy them. This can be compared to what is said in the Bible that states, the Lord will destroy the wicked. On January 8th, 2020, in a tweet, Trump said, Iran has a very, very nasty poison, which can be compared to what is stated in the Bible, that the poison of sin spreads. The language isn't accidental. It mirrors the Old Testament's enemy of God trope, which historically served to justify total war. This strike bypassed the War Powers Resolution, which requires a congressional declaration of war or a 48-hour notification to Congress after hostilities begin. Now, why is this illegal? No congressional authorization. The Constitution grants Congress the exclusive power to declare war. Violation of the Powers Act. Violation of the War Powers Act. The Act demands a 48-hour report and limits engagement to 60 days without approval. Lack of an immediate threat did not constitute an imminent attack on the United States. The result? A dangerous escalation that spiraled into full-scale war, endangering millions of civilians in the Middle East and the United States alike. The war on Iran is not a strategic geopolitical maneuver. It's a religiously flavored power play. The administration's rhetoric, policy decisions, and defiance of constitutional checks all echo the blood-soaked biblical paradigm, where the divine right to rule justifies violent enforcement against perceived heretics. The MAGA movement has an explicit agenda to replace the secular constitution with a Christian constitution. Look at the legislative proposals that have flooded state houses in the past decade. The Bible bill in Tennessee in 2011 required public schools to teach creationism as fact. The Religious Freedom Restoration Act shields businesses that refuse service to LGBTQ plus people on base grounds. Prayer in schools, resolutions. Salvo album, mandate daily prayer in public schools. These bills are not isolated. They are coordinated attempts to re-Christianize public policy, effectively erasing the separation of church and state that the Founding Fathers fought to protect. The cultural war phrase, coined by Pat Buchanan in the early 1990s, describes a long-term strategy. Define the other, such as Muslims, atheists, LGBTQ+, immigrants. Create moral panic. Portray these groups as existential threats to Christian America. Mobilize the base. Use churches, televangelists, and social media to rally voters. And legislate the truth, meaning the Christian nationalist truth, which isn't actually truth, through media conspiracies, Twitter storms, and the moral majority. Trump 2.0, the MAGA Christian Nationalist Coalition has re-engineered American politics to mirror the theocratic vision of the Old Testament kings, where the ruler claims divine authority and silences dissent with force. Humanism is not a religion. It's a philosophy grounded in the belief that human beings had the capacity to lead ethical lives without supernatural oversight. Here is how it directly counters the biblical war narrative. Now, here's the biblical premise versus the humanist counter premise. Divine authority justifies violence, is the biblical premise, versus the humanist approach that empathy and rational discourse resolve conflict. In the Bible, the biblical premise, moral law is written on stone, versus the humanist approach that states morality evolves through shared experience and science. Now, the biblical premise here says that faith demands obedience, while the humanist approach states that critical thinking encourages questioning and growth. And another biblical premise on this is sin requires punishment, versus the humanist approach that states that restorative justice must focus on rehabilitation. When societies adopt secular, evidence-based policies, we see measurable improvements, lower homicide rates, higher life expectancy, and broader civil liberties. The data from the World Values Survey consistently shows that more secular nations rank higher on happiness, trust, and gender equality. Humanist communities, from secular humanist groups to global atheist alliance networks, provide exactly the same social support for atheist, ex-Christian, secular humanists, etc., without the coercive doctrines of religious communities. Weekly discussion circles to explore philosophy, science, and ethics. Volunteer projects that build tangible goodwill, such as food banks, environmental cleanups, etc. Mentorship programs for youth navigating a post-religious world. These are organic, inclusive spaces that celebrate diversity of thought instead of enforcing a monolithic belief system. Countries that have explicitly separated religion from the state, such as Sweden, the Netherlands, and Canada, display lower rates of religious-based hate crimes, higher rates of gender equality, and robust protections for minorities. Their governments don't need divine justification to enforce laws. They rely on constitutional safeguards, human rights charters, and democratic accountability. If the United States were to fully embrace secular governance, we would eliminate the legal foothold that allows Christian nationalist policies to flourish. The First Amendment would be reaffirmed, not as a relic, but as a living guarantee of freedom of thought for every citizen, regardless of creed. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, subscribe to the podcast channel on YouTube, and share this video with anyone you feel may benefit from it. And also, if you could, please encourage your friends to subscribe. I'd really enjoy my friends. This all helps the algorithm promote my videos to a bigger audience. I'd really appreciate it. Finally, if you enjoy Secular Strike Back and you live in the United States and would like to support it, please consider making a $3 monthly donation by going to my Patreon and becoming a member. The link is in the video description below. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you the next time. Bye.